Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my June reading wrap up. I read, I believe 16 or 17 books this month and we're going to talk about them all today. However, I do need to do a few disclaimers before we start this video. First, it is very possible that I hated a book that you might like. Also could have liked a book that you might have hated. That is completely fine. Literally, that's just all that reading's about. I think with BookTube and Book Talk, people kind of forget that it's okay to form your own opinions on books. I'm saying this because there are some books in this video that are very popular that I hated, and I'm kind of scared for people to see that. Me and my old two subscribers. And then also, the second thing is to please don't compare your reading month to mine. This month, I just had a lot of free time. In all honesty, I don't really do much outside of work besides take care of my dog and read. So I did read a lot of books. This is not a normal amount of books for me. Please don't compare how many books you read this past month to what I read this past month. If you read anything this past month, that's a win in and of itself. Yeah, just wanted to say that. As well as I do have stitches right now in my back. Not fun. If I'm moving kind of awkwardly in this video, it is because it kind of hurts to move. They're like right on my spine. So it's really painful and not a lot of fun. These are all the books that I read this month, as well as my Kindle. This is so much money in books. I'm starting with a book that was very popular on TikTok. It probably still is popular on TikTok because it is a stunning book. That is Before We Were Strangers by Renee Carlino. This is a second chance romance about two people that met in college. They lost touch and then they see each other on a New York subway train. You follow them from there. I need to look up what I rated this. I gave this a 1 out of 5. Starting this off strong. Everyone seems to love this book. I remember reading this and I felt like the characters were so painful to read. They were very like immature. I totally get that like they're in college, so part of that was to show the difference between them now and them young. I just didn't like the characters, and because I didn't like the characters, it was very hard for me to like the story. I think it's a great concept. However, I just did not like the way it was executed. So yeah, this was a very popular TikTok book that I was kind of disappointed that I didn't like. It's a stunning cover. Then I read probably one of the most popular books this month to have read. I read The Ballad of Never After and Once Upon a Broken Heart. This is the first book. This is the second book. The third book I believe comes out in September. In this book you follow Evangeline. Listen, if I ever say book characters' names out loud, especially for fantasy books, don't ever say anything about me pronouncing them wrong, because when it's in my head, it's not wrong. When I say it out loud, especially in videos, this is probably the first time I've ever said the character's name. You follow her. Basically, the love of her life is gonna get married and she meets a fate to stop it, and you follow their story from there. This is obviously the second book, so I'm not going to go into what happens in this book. I read these back to back and these were stunning. These books are 5 out of 5s for me. However, I do have to say reading these two books did put me in a book slump. I am so excited for the third book to come out because this book leaves a big cliffhanger. Like, it ends on a big cliffhanger, and I like closed this book when I read it and I literally had to sit there for like 5 minutes and just like think about what happened. But yeah, these are like honestly probably some of my new favorite books, and I've never once been the person who wants to collect like different book covers. However, this series has some of the prettiest book covers. I think the UK covers are some of the most stunning book covers I've ever seen. That is kind of one of the book series that I do want to get all the book covers and collect them because they are so pretty. I kind of like this better than ACOTAR. Anyways, that says a lot because I was like an OG ACOTAR reader before it went viral. So the next book that I read was another fantasy book. I read City of Ashes, which is the second book in the Mortal Instruments series. If you have no idea what the Mortal Instruments series is about, go watch. I'll link it in the description. Carrie Can Read, I believe that's her channel name. She did like a whole 2-hour dive into basically what that first book is about. This is the second book. I'm gonna have spoilers right now because I do need to talk about this and I need to get my thoughts out. If you have not read this book and you do not want spoilers, skip to this time. If you don't care, let's go. A big plot point of this book and of this series that the male main character and the female character, so Jason Clary, if you've seen the movie, you already know what goes on, but that they're siblings. And it's announced after they kiss in the first book. Weird in itself. However, in this book, it's known that they're siblings for the whole book. This is big spoilers. Clary is dating Simon, and I can't remember if it happens while she's with Simon or after, but there is a scene where Jace and her are talking, and Jace is very much like, we could run away. We could be together. No one needs to know. And they still think that they're siblings at this moment when they're talking about this. There's a lot of tension between them, and they think that they're siblings. Because also another spoiler is, from my understanding, that the whole, oh, you're siblings is like, haha, bitch, get pranked. But in this book, there's so much sexual tension between two characters who believe that they're siblings that it kind of is just gross. It's odd. It was kind of hard for me to get through this book. I rated it a 1 out of 5. I would give it kind of like a 1.5, maybe a 2 out of 5. I do want to read the third book because I just want to know like what happens, but I didn't love this story. I think it kind of dragged on. I do have to say these books are some of the prettiest fantasy books that I've ever seen. All of the spines, when you collect the series, makes like a big like a picture, which is another reason that I really want to read all the books, because I think these books would be stunning to have on my bookshelf. The next book that I read was These Hollow Vows. I think this is probably one of my favorite book covers I've ever seen. It is so beautiful. I have to read the back because I already forgot what this book was about. For most books, I open it, I know what's going on in the story. The second I close the book, I have no idea what I just read. So this is about Bree, and it's with like fae and fairies. Her sister is taken and she has to go to the rival Seelie court. Oh, I'm remembering it as I'm reading the back. Basically to complete these tasks to get her sister back. There's a big plot twist with like the two dudes. I loved this book. I thought it was really good. I did give it a 2.5 stars out of 5 just because it wasn't anything extraordinary. It was a good story. I liked it. I have heard that the second book is really bad, and I really wanted to read the second book after I read this first book, but I couldn't find it at Barnes & Noble. So I don't know if I'll go back and read the second book. I'm like iffy about my feelings on it. Then I read my first Emily Henry book. I read Happy Place. This is about, it's Harriet and Wynne. They've been together since college. They're part of the same friend group, and they recently just broke up, but none of their friends know that. So they go on this vacation trip that they always go on, and they have to act like they are together so that their friends don't find out. I rated this a 3 out of 5. This was my first Emily Henry book, and I was scared having this be my first book because everyone says that this is her best book that she's ever released. However, I do think people say that because it's the latest book that they've read from her. I don't think that this is her best book. Everyone was like crying while they read it and all of these things, and as much as I do feel like connected to the characters and I liked the story, I didn't think it was that extraordinary in that sense. It was a very good book. I think I would have liked it better if it wasn't for I started a reading slump when I was starting this book. I also do have to say, when I rate books, something that's hard for me because I rate books all on a standard 1 to 5 just based off of if I liked it or if I didn't. However, I do have to say, for me rating fantasy, which is fantasy and thrillers are my 2 favorite genres, I kind of compare every book to that scale where I feel like if you're rating a literary fiction or a romance, that almost should be rated on a different scale than comparing it to how you felt when you read a fantasy. So that's another thing, is I'm just getting into reading like contemporary romance and all of these things. I think maybe I would also have had a higher rating for this if I was a bigger contemporary romance reader. Then I read Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. This is another really popular book talk and booktube author. Alice Feeney wrote Rock, Paper, Scissors and Him and Hers. I read Rock, Paper, Scissors a couple months ago. I didn't love the story, so I was kind of nervous going into this because I did not realize that she was the person who wrote this book. I gave it a 2 out of 5. The characters for me also were very insufferable in this book. This book is one of those like classic, they all are like on an island where they're kind of stranded. You can't get off the island until until like a certain time, and then all of a sudden they find someone who's dead, and then every hour someone starts dying. One of those stories. I also kind of think that I'm in a slump for thrillers because I feel like I've read so many thrillers with this plot that it's just boring to me now. I think I would have liked this more if I read it in the start of my journey of reading thrillers. But yeah, I hated the family, I hated the characters, and also the ending to me felt like such a cop-out ending. I'm trying to figure out what I can say without spoiling this. I've also been moving so much that I feel like my stitches are kind of starting to hurt. The ending to me felt like when you're in a creative writing class and at the end of your paper you write, "and then I woke up." That's what it felt like to me. I didn't like the ending, so that made me kind of sad. I don't know if she's gonna be watching this video, probably not, but thank you to Kirby, because this was my birthday present this year. She got me a few books, and this was one of the books, so shout out to her. I love you. Next, I read another contemporary romance. I read Maggie Moves On by Lucy Score. Lucy Score is, again, a very popular book talk, booktube author. I bought this book as again, when I'm in a reading slump, I feel like I read romance because romances are very just like easy to pick up. I didn't love this book, even more than I didn't love the other books that I've been reading. I kept a little notebook with all of my thoughts, and the note that I wrote for this book is, I can't tell if I didn't like the book because it was bad or because I don't like contemporary romances. I wrote also that a lot of the phrases that they talk in are super cringy. I think that's probably why I kind of wrote that I don't know if I didn't like this book or contemporary romance, because I feel like in a lot of romance books, they talk in a dialogue that is so fucking cringy. Not even in like smut scenes. I don't know. In fantasy books, you'll never have a fantasy character go, OMG, LMAO, bitch. No, like that's not a thing. Not a thing. And it's a thing in this book, and I hated that. This book is about a like YouTuber who flips houses. She gets this mansion. I forget if he's a carpenter. He's like someone who fixes the house, whatever. And of course they fall in love because it's a romance book. A big plot point is also the dog. I didn't like the dude in this book. I did not like his character at all, which is also part of the reason I hated this book, because how am I going to like a romance book if I don't even like the dude in the romance book? I didn't like this book. I gave it a 1.5 out of 5 stars. Anyways, moving on. Here's a book that's positive. I read Beach Read. I'm not really gonna talk about what I rated this book. If you wanna see what I rated it, go watch my last video, which is a Beach Read reading vlog. All of the rest of the books that I read this month, I do not have with me. This next book, I did read a physical copy of it, but it's right now at my parents' house. This one I'm also very nervous to talk about. I read Dance of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson. I gave this a 2 out of 5. I shouldn't have done this, but I basically started the book, I got halfway through it, and then the last like 3 or 4 books that I just talked about, I read in between me starting the book and me finishing it. So I spent the entire second half of the book trying to figure out what even happened in the first half of the book. And then by the time that I cared enough about the story, it was like done. I think I would have enjoyed the book if I wasn't in a reading slump. I don't think I'm gonna read the second book. I don't know. I just didn't really care for it. It's very much politics based. I do have a problem. This is like a minor spoiler. The book is enemies to lovers. And I don't know again if I just didn't comprehend this right, but they're enemies and then 100 pages in, they're lovers. And that's not enemies to lovers for me. So I didn't like it. The rest of these books I read on my Kindle. This is my baby. I've had this since 2021. I usually read off of Libby with my library. I bought Kindle Unlimited for the month. My thing that I do with Kindle Unlimited is if I have Kindle Unlimited, I'm only gonna read books on Kindle Unlimited, and then like the day before it renews, I will cancel it and then I'll go back to reading physical books, and then I'll just do that because that's how I feel like I get the most bang for my buck. Because also Kindle Unlimited went from being $9.99 to $11.99, and in this economy, bitch, no. I really wanted to start the Chestnut Springs series. I read Flawless and then Heartless by Elsie Silver. It's the first 2 books in the Chestnut Springs series. And here's the thing. I paid for Kindle Unlimited because they didn't have it at my Barnes & Noble. I really want the limited edition covers of these books. But that's the whole reason that I bought Kindle Unlimited, is so that I could read them and understand what people were talking about, and then I didn't need to buy the physical copy because like what's the point of that? You've already read the book, you're probably not going to read it again. but I loved these books so much. I think it's really funny because this is a small town cowboy romance, and of course I would be reading books like that. Flawless is about a professional bull rider. He gets in trouble and basically has to be babysat. It's either by a PR agent or like his manager, whatever. I loved that book. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I think it would have been a 5 out of 5 if not for the end of the book. And then the second book of the series is Heartless. It's an interconnected series. You've probably heard so many people talk about this if you watch booktube videos. Basically, it's about the brother. So the first one is about Rhett, and then the second one is about Cade. It is small town single dad and nanny trope. I gave this book a 5 out of 5. I feel like most people give the first book a 5 out of 5 and this book like a 4 out of 5. I loved this book so much. The romance, it was realistic. The characters I loved. You also get like the characters from the first book in this book, so you start to get really connected to them. I loved the story so much. It was so good. I loved that book so much. And then I read some of the Mindfuck series by St. Abbey. It's a serial killer and an FBI agent. Listen, I'm not even gonna lie. I was reading this and I was imagining that the FBI agent was Spencer Reid. I was basically reading this, imagining that it's a published Spencer Reid fanfic. And it was beautiful. I gave this series like a 4 out of 5. I read the first 3 books. Is it a fun book? Yes, it is a lot of fun. However, it is not a literary masterpiece. It's a fun book. It's not necessarily a good book. There's a YouTuber, her name I believe is like Heather McClary. She's like one of my favorite book creators right now, and she's talked about this where like sometimes books are good in the sense of like they're fun, they're Wattpad-y, they're like, it makes me feel like I'm 16 again. And then there are books that are really good that are like literary masterpieces. This was very Wattpad-y. I literally just told you that I imagine Spencer Reid as the main character, so like put 2 and 2 together. But yeah, I really liked that book. And then I also read Done and Dusted by Lila Sage, which was another cowboy romance. I read this because I'm trying to figure out if I want to finish the Chestnut Spring series on Kindle Unlimited or if I just want to buy the last 2 books, because I know that I really like them and I'm probably going to want physical copies of them anyways. I'm using my Kindle Unlimited subscription time to read other really popular books right now. This one has a stunning cover and I rated it a 2.5 out of 5. Here's the thing. I think I would have rated it higher, but I read this in the middle of a vlog that's gonna come out. I just had the most crazy weekend. It was Gus's birthday. I went to Taylor Swift. I went to another concert. I had so many things that happened within the span of like 36 to 48 hours. While I was reading this book, I just was so lost when I would go back to it because I had so much stuff going on in my day anyways. So yeah, it was a cute story. Could I tell you what it's about? No. I finished it and it's out of my brain. And then the last book that I read, I don't have any notes written about it because I did just finish this book last night. I finished Mile High by Liz Tom Ford. I gave this book a 2 out of 5. It is about a hockey player that plays for Chicago and a flight attendant. It's like not forced proximity, I guess. I don't know. It's like workplace romance, kind of. They have to keep it a secret, all of these things. I think I would have rated it higher if the book was shorter. And I think also it took me a lot longer to get through this book. So I think just towards the end of reading it, I just didn't care about the story. I didn't care about the characters. I am glad that I read it, but like I've read better like hockey or like ice skating romances. Like if you want that vibe of like ice rink, whatever, read From Lukov with Love from Mariana Zapata. It's like one of my favorite books. Those are all the books that I read. I'm so sorry if I rated one of your favorite books really poorly. It's nothing against the book. It's honestly probably just because of my reading slump that I had this month. Let's be real. I will catch you whenever I see you next. And again, if you have any book recommendations, let me know, as well as if you have any like book related videos that you want me to film and you'd like to see, let me know as well. I love you. Make sure to subscribe, like, whatever. Goodbye.